Hello BookTube, this is Kelly and my channel is Books I'm Not Reading. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about James Baldwin's Go Tell It on the Mountain. I will do my very best to make sure there's no spoilers in this because I hope that you will add this to your TBR if it isn't there already. I did this as a buddy read with Madelyn from MadeWithBooks, and she's going to post a video on it later this month, so be sure to watch for that, and I will link to her channel down below. This is, I think, my third attempt at making this video. I'm really struggling with how to talk about this book because the more I think about it, the more excited I get, and the more I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to read more James Baldwin. Like, why have I waited so long? One of the fascinating things that happened with this book, this buddy read, I guess I should say, is that one of the first things Madelyn said to me was, I didn't really realize it was going to be so religious, that there was going to be so much religion in the book. And the family in this book goes to a very strict Pentecostal church. And I mean, it was just sort of kind of one of those like booktube lights going off over your head, because I'm like, oh, like, you live in Germany. She did live in America for a little while, but and I think maybe went with her host family to church maybe a couple times. Probably not at Christmas though, or maybe her church decided that year not to sing Go Tell It on the Mountain, but it's an African-American spiritual song that has kind of crossed over into sort of mainstream Christian churches for a long time. And yeah, like, we sing it almost in the weeks leading up to Christmas or at Christmas Eve. So to me, the title is automatically a clue that this book is going to have some religious themes. I think for Baldwin, because this book is semi-autobiographical, I think it's more about him, like, kind of starting to, like, shout from the mountaintop, like, hey, this is who I am. And it does touch a little bit on homosexuality, as well as racism in America. But I really think the predominant theme has to do with religion. And that's because most of the book takes place in one church service, where three adult characters each have a section of prayer, and then we go back to the main character, John, who again is similar, had a similar storyline to the authors. So it was really great to talk with Madelyn about the biblical references in this book, and since we've voxed the last time, I've seen thought of even more kind of layers of things in there. So that was really fascinating. You know, we talked about Gabriel, who is the father figure in this book. He is a preacher, he's abusive, and I kept hoping that I would feel some sort of empathy for him, or something would be revealed that would make me sympathetic to his character. It doesn't ever happen for me. I thought actually the best section in this book is the mother's prayer. Her name is Elizabeth, and her story I thought was so powerful. I was just really, really blown away by that section. And yeah, James Baldwin definitely could write about women in a real, genuine way. I thought it was amazing. I'm always kind of interested to see how authors handle writing things from the perspective of the opposite sex. So Elizabeth's prayer, I thought, for me, that was the highlight of the book. The things I really, really loved about this book were, first of all, how authentic and real it was to me. Even though I didn't grow up in Harlem in the late 20s, early 30s. I did live in inner city Chicago for a year, and I went to a Pentecostal church, predominantly Puerto Rican neighborhood, and but it was a Pentecostal church. So in the book there's references to, tambourines, things people would shout out during the service, and yeah, like when I came back after that year, it was really hard for me not to be like, shout out amen in the service, because in predominantly Protestant churches, that's sort of frowned upon. Like, that doesn't really happen. And there's sections in here where you hear Gabriel, even though he's, like I said, definitely the villain of the book. But there are sections where he is preaching when he's looking back on his life. And you hear some of his sermons, and it was so real. It was so genuine and true. And I totally felt like, yeah, Baldwin knew exactly how to write that, from his own experience. And again, that's still the way. I've heard some great African American preachers, and it's amazing. It's a really incredible experience. And in my own Pentecostal church, like, there were people speaking in tongues. There was always an altar call. Always an altar call. So anyway, I just found that part of the book, so fascinating, because it just took me right back to that place. I could hear it in my head so well. It was so genuine. Again, Elizabeth's prayer and Elizabeth's section of the book, I found that the best part, the best writing of the story. And there's actually a quote from that part I'll share with you really quickly here. She's talking about, again, people from the South coming to the North. There was not, after all, a great difference between the world of the North and that of the South which she had fled. There was only this difference. The North promised more, and this similarity. What it promised, it did not give, and what it gave, at length and grudgingly with one hand, it took back with the other. I thought that was so powerful. I have heard other people say that, like, this book, it's rambly, like me, that it's just a lot of people in their headspace, and I found the prose really fluid. There were certainly sections that when I got to the end of, I just really wanted to keep reading. I didn't want to stop. I did, because I had to make sure I voxed Madelyn on what I thought about it right away. But yeah, I felt like Baldwin really pulled me through the work. My only problem with this is that it does end with kind of this spiritual experience section of the book, and I think that's really hard to write. There are things that I've seen and things that I have experienced in my own life that I can't articulate. Like, I can't explain to someone, like, what was happening, or what happened to me, or why I felt like it was a spiritual experience, I guess, if you will, for lack of a better term. And so I think that because by the time he wrote this was published in 1953. So by the time he wrote this, I think he had been so far removed from Christianity for so long that I don't know if he could. I don't know. Like, and I also think it's something that it's just so hard. It's so hard to write those words on a page and make sure that the reader understands and experiences it, because in some sense a spiritual experience is something that really can only make sense to the person that it's happening to. sometimes. Maybe not all the time, but I felt like that part of the book was a little bit weaker. But overall, like, wow, what a great book. And what a great book to remind us that we can talk about religion in literature in a way that's meaningful, in a way that is complicated. Faith is very, very complicated. And we can talk about doubt. We can talk about all kinds of things. And still, believers and non-believers can come away from the book with an appreciation of it. So anyway, I highly recommend this book. I can't wait to hear or watch Madelyn's video. Thank you so much for watching this with me, and I will be back soon. I know I've been absent a little bit from BookTube, but I have lots of videos that I plan on making here shortly. So thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Remember to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I'll talk to you soon, BookTube. Thanks. Bye.